Hello, welcome. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, Director of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. Thank you so much for being here for this special event. We do so many events and have done so many in the many years that I've been here now, and this one is totally new and different. So I'm really excited about it and so happy that you're here. And thank you to BCTV for filming the proceedings tonight. We have Christopher G. Chapman here in the second row to thank for this event tonight. Chris is born and raised here in Brattleboro. Chris is the president of the board of the museum, and Chris regularly reminds us that where there's food, there's Chris. And over the time that Chris has been on the board of the museum, I think something has happened in his brain where his interests in food and art have merged. And at a certain point, some number of months ago, he suggested, what about something having to do with food as art? And Chris comes forth with lots and lots of suggestions. And some of them are great. And this one at first was like, oh yeah, Chris and food, and where there's food, there's Chris. But then as we thought about it and talked about it some more, we realized, wait, there is really something to explore there. And we have such incredible resources right here in our community in terms of food preparation, and people who we think can speak to this topic. So that was kind of the genesis of this event, and as we began to look into it some more, we realized that there's actually like a lot in philosophy and in aesthetics that's been written about food and art, and there's a lot of new research happening around food and art, new to us anyway. And we've kind of hung the little bit of publicity that we've done around this event, around this quote, this famous quote that you bump into pretty quickly if you start looking into this topic online, from the 1st century Rome. Apicius is credited with saying, "We eat first with our eyes." And there seems to be a saying from cultures in the Middle East, maybe going way, way back, that's very similar, which is that the eye eats before the mouth. And as we've read and thought about this some more and thought about what we're beginning to delve into tonight, we also discovered that this is a field of inquiry in neuroscience as well, and that has yielded research suggesting that the physical evolution of the human eye as the complex organism that it is, has had to do with humans' ability to distinguish, to identify food, particularly food that is really nutrient-rich, so that the eye's ability to distinguish color maybe has its roots in the benefits of being able to spy a reddish fruit against a green background of foliage. So it really, it seems like, oh my God, this is really a rich area of inquiry, and now I'm thinking that maybe this is just the beginning, and that there will be more and fun and exciting and flavorful further programming that we can do in this realm. But in any case, we're starting off tonight, and this isn't going to be a panel discussion, as you may have determined from the setup. We have 5 presenters tonight, and they're each going to come up and present for about 10 minutes individually. And I'll introduce each one briefly, and then when they're done, we'll slide the podium out of the way, and we'll turn the lights up, and we'll bring out some chairs, and we'll have them sit up here, and then we can do the Q&A. Anyone have any questions or comments or anything before I introduce our first speaker?
Yeah, Jenny, when do we eat?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And then we eat. And when you're in the business that we are, where you're putting on events and hoping they're of interest to people and hoping people turn out. You always want as full a house as possible, except tonight I'm kind of happy that there aren't so many of you here, because it means there's more for each of us afterwards, or that there are only this many of you here. So Chris, after the Q&A, each of our presenters, I believe, has brought some samples for us to see and taste afterwards. So, without further ado, our first presenter is Sai Silver of CX Silver Gallery and Sai's Dim Sum Tea House in West Brattleboro. And I'm just going to read something I found online about Sai and CX Silver Gallery and the Tea House. I can't remember what the source was. A sign outside a sprawling gray Victorian in West Brattleboro reads CX Silver Gallery. Below that, Dim Sum. Inside, Sai Shi and Adam Silver, a quirky pair of empty nesters, serve dim sum in their first floor art gallery. By far the most authentic Sichuan-style Chinese food in Vermont, it's available most days with advance notice. But diners will also pick up on a distinct Green Mountain flavor. That's because Sai blends the culinary traditions of her native city of Chongqing, China, with those of her adopted state of the last 3 decades. So the sesame-scented fork-tendered Baijianji, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing, poached chicken breast, sliced thin and served cold, comes with garlic scape puree instead of the traditional scallion sauce. Likewise, dried cranberries add tartness to a tangle of spicy dandan noodles, though cranberries were largely unknown in China until recent years. We use maple syrup too, because we're Vermont people, Adam said, carrying a pot of pu'er tea to the table one night. That's our poetic license. So for our first presenter, would you please welcome Sai Shi.
I'm wearing the apron today, and then I'm going to introduce you, Sharon. I'm going to introduce you the Chinese 5 elements. So before they are ready, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these elements. So each color is represented in the organs. So for instance, red is fire. Fire is heart, and I will come to yellow. Yellow. Can you stand yellow? Yeah. Yellow. Yeah. Yellow is earth. Earth is representing in the organs stomach and spleen. Then white is metal. Metal is lung. Yeah. Then black, and sometimes it can be dark blue, is water. Water is kidney. Yeah, kidney. And or bladder. Now, last one is green. Green is wood. Wood is lever, and each of them has a taste also. So the taste is red is better. Better food is good for heart. And yellow is a sweet. Sweetness is good for stomach, warming stomach. And white is metal. Metal is umami, yes. And black is kidney. Kidney is salt. So your body needs salt for kidney. And the green is liver. Liver is sour. Yeah, sour taste. Citrus is good for liver. And so each of them also create each other. The creating system, so Chinese original came from, start with yin and yang. You all know yin and yang. And then look at yin and yang is for everything, it's universe. So within the yin and yang, there are 5 elements going. So the creating fire is creating wood. Wood is creating fire. Fire is creating wood. Wood is creating earth. And earth is creating metal. Metal is creating water. That's how the creating system. And there's also control system. So the water controls fire, can take off the fire. The fire controls wood. Wood can burn the wood. Wood controls earth. And wood, the trees can control the earth's erosion. And earth controls metal. So metal, makes metal, creates metal. And metal controls, actually, so it's metal controls the earth. Metal controls wood. So it's kind of like an order that and then wood controls earth. Earth controls water. Yeah, that way. So, because it is visually will be creating systems going like this, and controlling system going like this becomes a star. Yes, that's how. So you can imagine that your inner organ is creating each other. So your heart is creating earth. Heart is creating stomach. So in order to have your stomach feel comfortable, you strengthen your heart. And then the earth is creating lung. Earth is creating lung. So, and the lung is creating kidney. Kidney is creating liver. Liver is creating heart. And also by taste, for taste, so the food or our food, it goes in general. The red food is good for heart. That's in general. And the white food is good for lung. And green food is good for liver. And yellow food is good for stomach. And dark blue or black food is good for kidney. So, there's so much more to learn about it. There's an emotion to go, and emotion is fire, is joy, or laughter, and the lung is worry. So if you worry so much, you hurt your lung. Yes. And green is anger. And yes, if you're angry, then you hurt your liver. In China, we have saying if someone's so angry, we'll tell this person, your liver fire is too high. Calm down. You're hurting your liver. So that's why. And sadness is for stomach. If you're so sad, you feel your stomach ache. Yeah. And then what the kidney is fear. Yes. And there's so much more to it. There also each elements go with your senses also. And like water is is for sense of for your hearing, and kidney is for ears, for hearing. So and there are lots more information about it, and I'm just feel like this our food is a natural healing, is natural medicine. The main thing is to be balanced. You cannot eliminate anything, but balance and moderation is the key. Nothing should go more than eating excessive. So that's my presentation. And is that okay?
That's wonderful.
Thank you. Later on, I can make food there. As you're tasting, I can make more. You can see it.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
Thank you, helpers. And I'm sure already you have a number of questions, and I hope you'll just keep them in mind, and we'll have everyone back up here at the end to answer questions. Thank you, Sai. Okay, so next, I'd like to introduce Dar Tavernier Singer and John Singer of Tavernier Chocolates. And I read you a little something from their website where they talk about themselves and their business and their background. Our journey to become artisan chocolate makers has taken many twists and turns, but it feels like everything we've done has culminated in what we do and love now. We draw upon our travels and the exciting innovations in California cuisine and the farm-to-table movement, as well as our backgrounds in the arts, obviously, biology and chemistry, restaurants and cafes to inform our craft. John spent several years as head coffee roaster and manager at our local roasting shop when we first touched base in Brattleboro. His experience sourcing beans, cupping with leaders in the field, and visiting coffee origins has provided a great background to working with chocolate. John's years of leading small businesses has fueled our growth from a home-based business to our official launch in 2014 and continued growth today. Dar comes from a food-centric family with a long history of creating chocolates and other confections. Growing up in the St. Lawrence Valley where farms and foraged ingredients abound, Dar and her siblings were encouraged to act on their creative culinary impulses, baking bread, cookies and pastries, and cooking meals. Will you please welcome Dar and John?
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Okay.
You can take the mic off the stand if you prefer, and pass it back and forth, or however you want.
So, is this working? We're emulating the Chuck and Nancy single product. Everybody see this? Okay. Yeah, but I'm going to scowl.
Thanks very much. All right. Yeah, where do we begin? I guess I would like to begin just by saying we realize that we work with probably the most popular food product on the planet. We work with chocolate. Is there anyone here who doesn't like chocolate? I think probably most people do. What's exciting for us is that we try to use it in new and fresh ways. And we're really inspired by the food that we source either by foraging or by buying it from sourcing from local farmers in the area. Are you?
Yeah, you just.
So basically, we're using classic techniques as far as handling the chocolate is concerned. Chocolate is one of the most temperamental ingredients to work with. But it's also, we find that it's a lot more flexible than what a lot of traditional confectionery approaches have shown in the past. So for us, we like savory flavors, and that's really what we explore when we're exploring recipes and trying to figure out what we want to do next. I'm so nervous, I'm sorry. We have a garden at home. That's a huge inspiration for us. So we do grow some herbs that we use in our chocolates. And also, just visually, the garden is really, really inspiring. And we can talk a little bit more about that later when we show our finished product. We are lucky in that our house borders the retreat trails. So we're often out in the retreat trails. We do a lot of our own foraging, and we just enjoy the outdoors. A lot of the smells, and again, the way that things look and plants just really inspire us. I actually studied biology and worked with a botanist when I was studying biology, and drew scale drawings of plants when working with this botanist. So this is really kind of bringing me back to my roots, I think. Walking through the forest and deciding what we're going to use as ingredients, or what inspires us visually to create a palette for our chocolates. So I'll just show you some of the stuff that inspires us. We also work with a lot of local producers who make things, sometimes specifically for us. This is maple from Bunker Farm, and they actually make the maple nuggets, the maple sugar, while they're creating it a little bit bigger and grainier, so we can use them on our bars. And they have a nice crunch to them. We also work with local foragers, and they forage lots of edible flowers and herbs, and yeah. So these are sea roses from the coast of Massachusetts. Sometimes we go a little bit farther afield than just Vermont. We are mostly New England source foods. Here are some husk cherries that we got from a local farmer as well. And this is an example of a final product. So basically, all of our time spent out foraging and walking through the forest ends up in a product that looks like this. These are actually our mushroom truffles that have foraged mushrooms in them. We wanted them to also look like the ingredient itself. What's most exciting to us is when things look like something that you would just find along the path, and kind of evoke that feeling of discovering the mushroom in the forest, smelling it, and then tasting it. That is
This is a black garlic from Pine Meadows Farm, and we've incorporated that into a dark chocolate ganache, and it's fantastic. It's a great example of umami and chocolate.
exactly. There's another. These are all out of order, so
Yeah,
that's
so
why it's kind of throwing me off. But we also use spruce needles. So these are locally foraged spruce needles as well. We've done, pardon? Yeah, spruce needles, yeah. So spruce needles, a lot like rosemary, another coniferous plant. They contain a lot of vitamin C. They have a nice resinous flavor. They are edible. Native Americans use them in their cooking, and we are inspired to use them as well. So we bring ingredients back into our kitchen and start playing around with them. This is sage from our garden that we candied, and here's done tempering. These are out of order, so, so we'll just wing it.
So chocolate basically comes to us in blocks, and we are using mostly South American chocolate right now. A lot of Venezuelan. We'll have to see if that continues. You temper chocolate by bringing it up to a certain temperature, dependent on the chocolate itself, and then lowering it down. And as you lower it down, the chocolate crystallizes. And that's why a block of chocolate is not shiny. This process will make a shine. So when we do our bars, we do molded chocolates that don't have anything on top of them. What we're shooting for is a high gloss. So it looks great. And hopefully when you see our chocolates, that's the way it's looking. We started off, just a short aside, hand tempering. And so during Christmas season, I would stir the chocolate for 8 hours a day, literally going like this the entire time. And fortunately, we've graduated to tempering machines. We have a couple now. And this is a picture from our early days.
Yes, hand. So the chocolate itself creates like a beautiful palette. Kind of think of it as an artist canvas for showcasing our ingredients. Of course, flavor and flavor combinations are incredibly important to us. We pair all of the ingredients ingredients with the different chocolates. Chocolate's much like wine or coffee. It depends on where the beans were grown and what regions, and then how they're handled afterwards. And they each have very distinctive flavors and characteristics, and they each pair differently they pair better with different things. So here we have an example of us hand placing ingredients on all of the bars. We want them to be beautiful and to be a full experience, and again to evoke the source that they came from. So here we make a botanical bar where we have 4 different types of edible flowers, and as you bite through the chocolate, you get a different taste experience with every bite. So we like it also when flavors kind of travel, and then you have that visual while you're doing it. Here's another one that's inspired by nature. This is our chocolate geology collection. We've actually had a lot of people buy them for geologists, which is pretty fun. And so far, everyone's been pretty happy with their representations. But we're inspired by local rock formations, so schists and slate and granite. And since rock is obviously a hard and mineral has hard mineral composition. It's solid chocolate with different salts and nuts and other crunchy things. So again, you get that full experience. Here we have the pine needles. So the pine needles here are in a bed of milk chocolate with a little bit of matcha green tea, and that kind of makes you think of moss and a forest path, and that's what we called them. This was actually inspired by taking a hike in the springtime and looking down at a muddy path and thinking, really want to recreate that in chocolate. How can we do that so it tastes good and it also looks like what I'm seeing right now underneath my feet? Here's an example of another thing we do. Fresh husk cherries. These are, when we use fresh fruits, we dip them, or we'll show you, we use a molding process. So you can see the beauty of the fruit. We keep the husk on the husk cherry and kind of pull it up so it looks like maybe a flower seed that's ready to fly away, or maybe little ballet dancers. And it's just beautiful, but it's also really delicious. When you bite into it, it bursts in your mouth and you get that little bit of chocolate. Fresh fruits again, more ephemeral pieces that you have to eat right away. We do a molding process where we put the fresh fruit in and just gently pour chocolate over the top. And this is the result, which we think is kind of fun. Again, it's really crisp, beautifully tempered chocolate, thanks to John. And fresh fruit that when you bite into it, it just bursts in your mouth, and it's just very beautiful to look at. Our bonbons, so ganache centers or softer centers, they all kind of give you a little bit of a clue of what you might find inside. So these have maple sugar inside. This has mint and basil inside of a dark chocolate ganache. This little biscuit has honeycomb toffee that we make ourselves. And this is the black garlic bonbon. We call it Total Eclipse, and it looks like a little orb that's floating out in space. And again, this is a peanut butter cup. It has a classic peanut butter cup shape, but it has a little bit of bee pollen on it, kind of giving you an indication that when you bite into it and the honey starts to burst in your mouth, that's what's happening. We also make chocolate charcuterie. So we had this idea because, again, we like savory flavor combinations, and part of what brought us here to Vermont from San Francisco 20 years ago now was the food that we kept hearing about, including cheeses. We love to make a lovely cheese board with local fruits and cheeses and bread, and we wanted another component that we could contribute to that. So we came up with chocolate charcuterie, which is they're savory chocolates that are either sausage style, like our chocolate salami, vegetarian, but we wanted it to look like a salami. So it has organic powdered sugar on the outside, and cookies and nuts and chopped fruits on the inside. So when you slice into it, it looks like the salami. And then chocolate pate, which is spreadable and is made with local cheeses that are blended into it. But it looks like pate. And a lot of people are fooled. Some people actually purposely fool people and put a chocolate salami on a cheese board when they're at a party and just kind of watch what happens when people try. And so again, that's it in a nutshell, just visually and also flavor-wise, playing with more savory combinations and trying to do it in an artistic way. And those are some of my sketches.
Thank you guys. That was fabulous. We would not have known you were nervous. That was perfect. But it reminds me that I want to especially thank all of you. I mean, it's just so nice of you and generous to come out and share your expertise with us. But also, you have to do that in this public speaking format, which I realize not everyone does and is comfortable with, and is not necessarily part of your job on a daily basis. So thank you for doing this. Our next presenter is Erin Bevan, the chef de cuisine of Artisan Restaurant at the Four Columns Inn in Newfane. And I'm going to read to you a little bit from an interview that's online having to do with Erin and the Four Columns. Erin Bevan came from Boston and a career working in Beard Award-winning Italian restaurants to a tiny town in southern Vermont and a kitchen where she's expected to collect her own eggs and herbs from the on-site micro-farm. How's the adjustment been? It's a dream come true, she said. In Boston, you'd have relationships with a few farms, but here I have close relationships with about 30, and I've only been here a year and a half. So this is a fairly recent interview, I guess, right?
Yes.
Four Columns Inn and Artisan Restaurant, as you may know in Newfane, is somewhat of a mecca for the local food movement. It was started in the 1960s by Renee and Pierrette Chardin. The inn was one of the first farm-to-table focused eateries in the country. The owners raised pheasant in the backyard and had a fully stocked trout pond where guests could literally choose their fish before sitting down to dine. The Four Columns' dedication to their farm-to-table roots is strong, but Erin's commitment was ingrained from the start. Growing up on a small family farm in Massachusetts inspired both her love of food and her commitment to the economic viability of her farm neighbors. She talked about a partnership with a local farm that she loves to work with, and continues, having close partnerships also makes sense for Erin's approach to her menu, which is rooted in her Italian training. Most of my recipes use about 5 components, she said. What makes them exceptional is how fresh, how flavorful those 5 ingredients are. I try to get out of the way of the ingredients as much as possible. So welcome, Erin Bevan.
Hello. Does that work? Yeah. All right. Hi, guys. Nervous would be an understatement. I'm used to being in a kitchen and letting my food do the talking for me. But this is a really important subject to me. I was an art student. I was a sculpture major. I went to Cornish College of the Arts. And I grew up on the farm, but it was the meeting of the art world and the farm background when I first got into a fine dining kitchen, where I saw, how those two things came together and how I could really express myself. I am, under, constant creative pressure, which is, an amazing gift. Every day I'm coming up with new dishes. There's so much about my sculpture background that informs my decisions of the food that I make. There's, of course, all the components of traditional sculpture, like, structure and shape and color. But then there's also the layers of flavor and how you structure flavor. And then, then we go even a step further in that there's the element of time. So I'm making art that needs to be consumed. It wouldn't be the same 4 hours later, never mind hung on a wall and, preserved for the ages. So there's this really unique aspect that I almost liken to something like graffiti, where there's no, I'm creating art that really is not meant to have permanence. And that's something unique to food and how it relates to art. So when I was an art student, what I loved about it was printmaking, wood carving. The processes of making art were what captivated me, even more than the concepts. And that is why food was, so ingrained for me, is that, for every dish there is a number of these processes, so I make all the pastas, I make the bread, all of these things, there's multitudes of components and processes that go into each dish. And so, there's just so much of it that sort of relates to that background where, there's such a craft to it. There's the art component, but there's so much that's about a long process. So some things are aged first, or things are slow cooked. The amount of time that it took to make that pancetta, or infuse the pasta with spinach, or all of those things come together and then are eaten in a 5-minute time span. So it's kind of it's lovely because it's just this moment in time, and it's not really meant to be anything more than that. My plating style is somewhere in between, like, what I want, like a grandmother. I emulate the Italian grandmothers, right? And I want food to look like your grandmother made it. But then I'm also like always looking at Michelin chefs online on Instagram. And so I'm kind of always bouncing in between those places. And so, you can see where I want things to look very natural, but also juxtaposed with something that's very composed. And, so if everything on the plate looks super forced, then I think that it doesn't look like you can eat it. It looks like you want to just step back from it. But when it looks, natural and organic, and, it's much more accessible. And I don't think that all chefs approach food that way. Chefs of the fine dining game, a lot of them really do kind of focus on something that's so abstract that sometimes you can't even tell it's food anymore. And it's really important to me that it still has that grandmotherly feel, that it still feels like food of the heart, and that, and a symmetry too. I love food that's asymmetrical. I like to present whole ingredients on the plate and do, sort of minimal transformation. Let those ingredients speak for themselves, especially here in Vermont, where I get these incredible things. I want those things to be the focus, and so it's kind of it's pushing myself, but it's also restraining myself, which I think is key in it for any good artist. I don't know. I guess that's I just I was going to talk about the dish, but that I brought in the sense that there's these incredible farms that I do get to work with, and they're inspiring. And then I have this Italian background, where like he introduced, you know, I have a lot of recipes that have just 5 ingredients, which is very common in Italian cooking. And that simplicity is really what allows me to let these ingredients be the focus, and you know, how I think I'm paying homage to these incredible farmers and foragers, people that work incredibly hard on their food, and it's a privilege to get to cook here and do what I do with it. So I think that's all I have to say.
That was terrific, Erin. Thank you. Although you may have been upstaged by your pictures here. They're just totally stunning. Are people getting hungry yet? All right, so we have one more presenter, and then, as I mentioned, we'll push these things out of the way, turn up the lights, and we'll do a little Q&A, and then we'll hear what you all want to say about what you've brought, and then we'll spend some time eating. So our final presenter is Sharon Myers. Sharon started cooking professionally at the Morning Glory Cafe on Nantucket, and then traded art classes for cooking skills at the Haystack Mountain School of Crafts on Deer Isle, Maine. She and a friend started the Elegant Caper, a catering company in Carlisle, Mass. And soon after, Sharon opened her own catering business here in Brattleboro, Sharon Myers Fine Catering, which serves clients here in southern Vermont and also western Massachusetts and in New Hampshire and beyond. Sharon's a regular winner of our Best in Brattleboro awards for catering. A natural chef and baker, Sharon has continued to take classes in New York, Vermont, and Italy with many of today's well-known chefs and bakers, including a few trips to Napa for California influence. She is a graduate of Connecticut College and has a master's in aesthetic education from UMass Amherst. And don't you also more recently have straight up an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts? No. Harwood College of Art in Maine. Sharon's love for form and color are obvious in her artwork, in her weavings and one-of-a-kind quilts and other works. Her work has been seen in many publications and has traveled in group shows all around the world. She continues to make art that's not food and also make food. Her love of color and form and texture are obvious in all of that. So, without further ado, why don't we hear from our final presenter, Sharon Myers.
After this shot, my staff said to me, "You are not allowed to let anyone order green beans." I mean, cases and cases of green beans. First, Erin, your food is absolutely exquisite. I'm just, that you have the facility and you can do that is extraordinary. That's wonderful. Something that off-premise caterers can't do. Also, the stills in this slideshow are mine, and the action shots are Jeffrey's. So I had this fantasy when I was an art teacher that if I went into the catering business, I would have the winters off to do my artwork, and I would have the summers to cater, and all would be perfect. Well, for all of those who think, oh, I love to cook, wouldn't it be great to be a caterer? My first question is, do you love to do paperwork? Because catering is a different business. There is, yes, food involved, but it is 85% preparation, planning, meeting with clients, meeting with mothers, meeting with brides, meeting with the friend of the bride. Sometimes I get 8 people who come together and think they're going to plan the menu. I can't tell you how lovely that is and charming. So what I do is I get everybody's notes and I listen to all of them, and then they go home and then I create because there are too many ideas. Catering is also a theater piece. It's about organizing. And if you are not organized down to the very last second with everything, you're not going to make it. And even if you have organized and met with the rental company and met with the wedding planner and talked to the bride and talked to your purveyors who suddenly on Friday morning they deliver and we didn't have any mushrooms. Or, we were out of whatever, but they neglected to tell me. So off I go on another tangent trying to find something. So all of those pieces have to be in place. And I can't even begin to tell you how complicated it is. For example, yes, we want you to do our wedding. Great, it's 150 people. It's in June. It'll be perfect. Right. June 10th, I get the call that says, oh, the wedding's next week, but we went up to 300 people. Is that going to be a problem? So, I've rented everything. I have my staff, and now I have to double. And it's June, and no rental company in town has anything left. So, I'm dealing with 3 rental companies in 3 different states delivering to this site, and it's all going to go back to the same place, and nobody's going to mess up. So when you think, God, this is just so much fun, it is fun, but it's perfection. It has to be, you have to have a brain that can keep it all in. One of the things about the way I run my business is that I cook in my home. And so I have a great commute. I can have my coffee. And then, because it's not full time, my friends come. My friends come and cook with me in my kitchen. Couldn't be better, right? Some of them stay for a while, cooking green beans. And I am greatly appreciative that they love to do it and they all want to come. So one of the important parts is, 1, that I do have these friends, and 2, that I have a staff that I have worked with for a long time. Some of them have been 20 years. And they know me, they know my style. In the beginning, yes, of course, they had to learn how I visualize things, what things were going to look like, because the presentation is essential. One of the things I really wish was that I had larger budgets so that I could decorate more. But given what we have here, I try to coordinate as best I can. I try to ask them to give me flowers that they're using, have their florist provide flowers so that everything coordinates color-wise. I have a garden at my home where I have all my fresh herbs. I always try to raise edible flowers so that I can use those for garnish. If someone says in June I want nasturtiums, I always say, well, you're probably going to do it for August until you get those. But you can buy them, but they're not great. They come in, they've got spray on them. It's the same thing with why don't you use pre-cut green beans, or why don't you, whatever. It comes in with chemicals on it. I don't like that. I want my food delicious and fresh. And I want to make it on site, as much as I can on site. So in the last 10 years or so, we've been really lucky because now rental companies are providing us with lodging standing ovens, heating units. We've always had, got tables and everything. But there's so much cooking equipment because every time I do a job, I move my kitchen. Now, I don't know about you guys, but you know where everything is in your kitchen. So half of what I have in my kitchen gets picked up and moved to another site. And luckily, I have staff who've worked with me long enough so that, thank God, I can walk out of the room. I can walk out of the tent, and they know what to do. And very often, as I said, there's a slide in here with me going like this. I think it's after this one. Because I was explaining to my staff, Mia and moi, that the party is going to be on 2 levels. I will be up in the kitchen, up here at the house, doing the hors d'oeuvres. You will be down in the tent, which is a mile away, handling everything else. Luckily, the chef that I work with had a walkie-talkie, which was great because we were getting sick of running back and forth. That's me explaining up here. We did weddings of 200 this last summer, which were exhausting. And, you know, everything went well. And one of the things I do with my staff is at the beginning of the event, I say, thank you and please, because I am not going to have time to say that during the day. I am so focused and so organized on what has to be done, where it has to go, that it's like point, just say, you know, like salad, ground beef, whatever it is. And they, you know, how to work. We actually had one young man working with us who had not worked before, and he finally said, she doesn't talk, she just points and you all know what to do. Anyway, my preference is, see, these are the standing blodges and the everything. I had one client who called me up, she had done all of her rentals, and she said, there are 8 tables here that I did not order, and I'm not paying for them. I'm sending them back. And I said, that's great. We wanted those tables so that we could prepare the food on them in the cook tent. So we can do it on the ground, or you can the tables. Anyway, you know what happened. We got the tables. So I am a self-taught baker, except for the fact that I learned really how to bake from my mother. And my mother, I think she made 2 things, brownies and cake. And I always watched her. And if you can imagine this small kitchen, the washing machine was here and the dryer, and then the counter. And then on this area of the counter, she had the mixer. And I would sit on the washing machine like, and she would say to me, you beat this batter until it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I've tried to explain that over and over to people. You know, it's like, they look at me like I'm crazy, but trust me. You beat that batter until it's gorgeous. And then it's right to cook. So, many things, many pieces to this. I try to do as much garnishing and decoration as I can. I also started as a sculptor, and that was what my major was in college. And I love it. I still consider myself a sculptor, though I'm now doing installation art. And yes, I did get my MFA 3 years ago. And I continue to work when I can. Trust me, there isn't as much time as I thought it was, because between January and May, I'm spending all my time doing quotes and meeting with brides and doing tastings, talking to the rental company, going over and over to make sure I have everything. And trust me, I've forgotten things. I mean, I had a rental company call me up and say, you've got 2 coffee pots on here, but I don't see any coffee cups. Thank God someone caught it, because I had been over it and over and over again. I missed it. And I do love to bake. If I could just do what I wanted, I would just bake every day, but then I'd have to eat it, because I'm home alone and the dog doesn't eat sugar. So this was actually right here, over against that wall in the museum. The other thing, this was a very interesting cake. They wanted it to look like a birch bark tree. I didn't just dump black stuff on it. They wanted it to look like a tree, and they wanted their initials carved in it. One of the other things that I'm very fortunate about is I have a lot of clients who I work with over and over and over again. And one of them is great. She'll call me up and say, you know, I was in London 2 weeks ago and I had this apple tart and it was like this, or it was a pear or something, and I'm like, can you make it? So I'm always trying to create something out of the information that I have gotten. I think I succeed most of the time. So far, nobody's complained immensely. Then there's always I want you to use my mother's recipes. And I want it to be like my mom's, you know, whatever. Well, that's great, except that she lives in Venezuela. She uses a different kind of mayonnaise than I do. I can't get that fish, I can't. So I always tell people, I will do the best I can, but it will not be exactly what you had in mind. So these photos, I mean, you can just sort of see everybody working and see what some of the food looks like. This is Isaac and Mia. They have been with me for quite a while. I walk out of the kitchen and leave them. Isaac actually has a food truck in Keene, which is fabulous if you all want sausages. Mia, on the other hand, decorates windows for Bergdorf Goodman. So, you know, they're both artists in their own right. Cooking has been a really wonderful thing for me because it's creative, it changes all the time. I refuse to do menu A, B, or C. Everyone who comes to me says, give me the menu, and I say, what do you want to eat? What do you like? What are your flavors? What can I create for you? Is it Moroccan? Is it Indian? Is it... I don't do Chinese. I decide. I send them over there. Then the cupcake craze came in. Do you know how much buttercream people were eating? I am so grateful that the cupcake craze has slowed down. So this is my final slide. And as an artist, and having just gone to graduate school, I hadn't realized how much my wedding business had gotten into my head and how affected I was by what I see as a caterer, all the weddings that I've done, and then all the divorces that I hear about. Can you have any idea how many grocery slips I collect in a year? This is an installation made, the clothes are made out of grocery slips and plastic bags. And it's a comment on divorce, women left with children, struggling to survive. They're making their clothes out of grocery slips and plastic bags because that's what they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. You make it sound like maybe the art that you've had to master among all the many that you've mastered is like stage management or people management or being a theater director. Wow, what incredible presentations from all of you. Inspiring and stimulating. So Josh is just bringing out chairs, as you can see. I will probably move this podium and we'll turn up the lights. And as soon as the chairs are out here, maybe you guys can come up and we'll see about people's preference for more intellectual stimulation versus some other kind of stimulation. So you guys want to just come up and have a seat? And I don't know, it seems like everybody's hearing pretty well here, right? If necessary, I'll reiterate questions and I'll pass the microphone around if it seems like that would be useful. So is there anyone who would like to kick us off here with a question or a comment?
We told you everything you needed to know.
Karen?
Erin, is that your name? I'd be so curious to know any one of those dishes, what the ingredients are that you use to create it. I can't even begin to guess.
Huh.
Or maybe like the 5 that you keep coming back to.
Yes, I have. I brought a little sample of a classic Italian dish. It's actually traditionally vitello tonnato, made with veal and a tuna sauce. It sounds very counterintuitive, but it's this kind of one of these combinations that the Italians, you know, who never would pair fish with cheese, but fish with a cold sliced meat. That the tuna, the cured tuna, it's canned tuna, a high quality canned tuna, brings that sort of umami sort of dimension to a cold sliced meat, and you know it's a dish that I learned 15 years ago in my first Italian kitchen, which is part of why I was inspired to do that tonight. I like to go back to my roots when it comes down to, you know, something sort of special. This is a big night for me. The other part of it is that I just got 2 whole pigs from Cherry Rail Farm in West Brattleboro that were processed for our restaurant. And we just got the delivery, and I'm sitting on 700 pounds of pork. And so it seemed like a good choice for tonight. You know, I always like to take these farm ingredients, use that Italian training, and do a little twist on it. So, you know, there's some components. The crispy capers are, you know, not rocket science, but not traditional either. So, you know, one of those places where I will depart a little bit. The tuna sauce is extremely simple. Canned tuna, olive oil, mayonnaise. We make our own mayonnaise. And Espelette is a French spice crushed chili with a little heat. Freshly ground black pepper, and lemon juice. So there you go. That's how simple it is. And the pork was just really slow roasted. So there's the process. I roasted it at 200 degrees for hours, turning it faithfully to make sure that it got evenly roasted. And there you go. It's served on a crostini. Simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah.
So the question is about flavor and color. You know, as a home cook, my biggest concern is how things taste, represent and how they taste. But it's really obvious from looking at all of your presentations, and when it's on color, that the presentation is probably almost as important as the flavor. So how do you find that balance?
Could you guys hear in the back?
No.
Do you want to try just a synopsis version of that?
Just a question about flavor and color and presentation. So, you know, where's the balance between really, you know, absolutely wonderful flavor and how the presentation looks and what the color and the balance is on a plate?
Great, thank you. And that's for anyone who wants to answer.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I had a client once who made fun of me because they kept talking about what they wanted, and I kept saying, but you're going to need a little red on that place. And you know, for years they're joking about get some cherry tomatoes. Sharon says we need a little red on that plate. I don't know where it comes from. It's a color, it's an eye, you know, people ask me to teach how to use herbs, and I can taste it. It's like there's the word Tom, which means you have a sense of taste. And everyone's is different. And sometimes I think mine is really way too different than most people's. But you look for some combination, and then your eye tells you what it needs. I can't do just blueberries. They're all, you know, purple. They're all whatever. I don't know if that helps, but.
Anyone else want to respond to
No,
that?
it's perfect to that, the 5 elements, they have colors. So when you have so much red, and you're naturally thinking, that's for heart. Then the heart will help the stomach, so the yellow will come in. So it's all related to each other. Nothing should be too much, but they always have this combination of different colors that soothing for different inner organs.
Dar and John, do you want to tell us about brown?
I think first and foremost, I think about flavor because it essentially it's going to be eaten, so that should be the most important part of it. But obviously the visuals are also really important. But I'm realizing that when I taste something, I oftentimes see the color and vice versa. And then when I'm thinking about things that go together and that match together, when I'm thinking of the flavors, I often see colors as well. And so I think that maybe that's how I approach it. Like for instance, with the botanical bar, thinking about the different flowers that would taste good together and not only be beautiful. It's just kind of a process that sort of, I think, weaves together when I'm thinking about it.
What's that word for crossing the senses.
I was just trying to.
Synesthesia.
Yeah.
Erin?
I wanted to say something about that simply because that's, one of the challenges I'm always facing with my plating techniques. And how I cross that bridge a lot is by creating sauces or purees. So if there's spinach in the dish, by blanching spinach and making a sauce that is also delicious, suddenly you have these splashes of bright green flavor. I also have like a zero waste kind of mentality in my kitchen. So for example, with the lobster pasta dish and those bright green splashes that were on the plate, I use the green parts of fennel, which the whole stalk and everything is sometimes treated as just waste, or I'll still put it in a veg stock, but I was able to make a very beautiful green puree that got splashed on the plate, or my little dots or things like that. There are flavors that make sense. They play off of, or maybe sometimes even are some of the ingredients in the dish. But by creating different sauces, you can create different designs that are really making it sort of pop.
John, did you want to add anything?
I think the interesting thing about our bars are that they're all handmade, and we're putting those elements on there. And some are organic, so we do organic placement. We're throwing things down. Others actually are patterns, especially on the Trinos bars where they're large. We're following various design elements every single time we're doing it, which Dara has created, and then we make. So we're kind of artist assistants in the studio of Dara. We make all these things. And then different shades of brown, it's interesting. So the mushroom truffles would be an example of where different colored cocoa powders are placed on there to mimic nature.
Right. And we don't use any artificial colors
Exactly.
at all. So all the colors that we use come from, nature is full of color. I don't feel like you need to add anything to that. Flower petals, and even, like John was saying, the cocoa powders. So we have an ombre effect with a lot of the mushroom truffles that we do, where they look distinctly different, but it's all just cocoa powder.
And I've been painting all my life. I'm always sitting in the studio with palette, with all these colors. I used to think I can eat the paint. I used to think I can eat the color. Now, in reality, it just really comes true. And in my kitchen, I just feel like these edible colors. Yeah. So this really related my painting experience with the cooking. It is coming together.
Let's hear from Lucy and Dara. You have a question?
So one of the things that's really obvious is that you all love to make food, and in an artistic way. And so I know I'm not the only person who was not raised that way. Like, I wasn't raised to love being in the kitchen. And so I'm always amazed with people who are comfortable, not only cooking, but cooking delicious things that look good. And so I'm wondering, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to really connect more creatively and pleasurably with the experience of like preparing food? I'm sure that you've met people like that who are just like, give me something, to inspire. And I know that every person is different, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
What a great question. Maybe a hard
In
one.
the beginning, Danny was saying in ancient Rome or something, using eye to eat. And in Chinese, there's a character of 3 mouths. It's called ping. Ping is to taste. Using 3 senses to taste. And one is eyes, is nose, and mouth. So together, it's tasting things. So when we cook, we use all these 3 senses, and then it comes creating the food.
I'm going to give you a completely different kind of answer. Find a recipe that looks interesting, invite one of your friends to dinner, and cook it together. I really, like, once a week, once every other week. I mean, I have two friends who get together once a week, and one week they do fishing, one week they do something, or somebody saw, and they are, improving their cooking, their taste, their vision.
I agree with that. I think it's how to connect with it is recognizing that food is love, and when you prepare anything that you enjoy, pick a process that you kind of enjoy, a recipe that speaks to you, and when you get to prepare it for somebody or with somebody, but for me it's all about that. Like, it's hard for me to eat my own food. I want to see somebody else enjoy it. I want to know that's going on. I love to cook for friends and family. I despise cooking for myself. I refuse to cook for myself because it's all about that. And so when you realize that you see somebody's face light up with the joy of that dish, that's, I think, how to connect with it. That's certainly how, my mother cooked with a tremendous amount of love using the farm ingredients, and that was, that's how she showed love. And so that's, that's what brought me to food in that way.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, or ask, because you're all artists, and so I was wondering if making food satisfies the same thing as creating, or as doing art. Like, does that satisfy the same need, or yeah?
No.
What a great question. I'd love to hear each of you respond to that.
No, it is an art form, but when I'm alone in my studio, it's a whole different experience.
I think it's a different aspect of art. It can be a traditional art on the canvas. And when I went to MFA, I started with traditional paintings. But I grew from that. It's like I really got interested with food, with health. So that's how I started with visual art and with food together. And ultimately, everyone needs food. Everyone eats. Everyone brings life. So that's how I had a question about what is art. And art is life. So ultimately, we all living. We want to create things that livable.
Erin, how about for you? Does doing sculpture, or I don't know if you still have a studio practice, but when you were doing that, does it satisfy the same thing as making food?
It does for me, I think, because perhaps I was never an artist like you, where I would try to think of something to say with my art, but that was never the natural thing. It was the process of making the art that I was in love with about being an artist. So I didn't have the motif and that burning sort of desire of many artists to create, to get what they're trying to say out. So for me, the fact that I, am driven by a constant need. I have 2 new dishes going on the menu tomorrow. I did a new dish today. It's perpetual, and I am going over those dishes constantly in my head, thinking about how I'm going to do them, and it's still that sort of creative process. But I have no message about divorce in my plate, or desire to make a message about divorce in my plate. So I think that there is a very, I'm a craftsman, as opposed to, and I think that's why perhaps, for you, they're 2 different things.
Well, and also, I meet all these brides, and I am so hopeful that these marriages will last. And then I meet them with their second husband and their 3 new kids, and I think, and it makes me so sad Yeah, right. So I just feel like I want them all to work.
That's such an interesting situation. It's so fully loaded because you're creating them for a love, for
Right. I mean, they're sharing their love.
They're
I'm
sharing
making exactly what they want. I wanted the Cinderella syndrome. Oh my God. So it's got to be perfect for them, and they're so joyous that day.
Dar, John, did you want to respond to that? Like, is it the same creative impulse or satisfy the same creative need,
It's
making food
definitely
and making art?
related, and I wouldn't say for me it really fully fulfills it, but it does to a large extent. But I did study painting and drawing and filmmaking, and there are definitely times when I just want to sit down and draw or sketch something. And going into the kitchen and working on things is not quite satisfying that, although that is very satisfying in its own respect.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I do love creating food and making new things. But you asked if it's a different experience, and yes, it is.
Dar, you had a question you wanted to pose.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, all of us here, we all have training in art. We all study art in college. I wonder if that's kind of common for people who get into food.
I think so.
I think an artist is natural cooking. It's natural because creativity is in there and imagination.
I would say that at least my experience, especially in Boston, where you have just a plethora of really cutting edge fine dining, or just that avant-garde sort of cuisine. That no, that's not the case anymore, because it might be the phenomenon of the Food Network, where the chef life is so glamorized now. There are so many young people who are getting involved in food right out of the gate, and going to culinary school. In part, that's part of what made me want to leave Boston was, I mean, it's getting to be not an old person's game, everybody is really young and energetic, and it's really incredible what that sort of focus is producing in kitchens and in cities. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so we all have some work to do here in a moment. Do you each just want to tell us quick?
I'll just ask one really quick question.
Sure.
So having the pleasure of working with both Erin and Sharon, one of the things that I've always witnessed is the execution of mass quantities, and the attention to detail on every single place, and the expectation of the guest to have that plate look exactly like the one person sitting next to them. The pressure that I see with both of you, with these weddings and these large functions, you never miss a beat. And I wonder what that stress feels like, or that execution feels like, on making sure that every plate, especially the details and the chocolates, where everything is finally, and you're doing mass quantities. How does that, is that, at the end, really rewarding? What happens when you miss that one flower or that one garnish of some type? How does it, I guess my point is the stress must be incredible. So, where is that,
We just made it for Christmas. And when we locked the door on Christmas Eve and said, okay, we're going to take tomorrow off, I got sick immediately. And I was down for a couple of days in bed. And so you push yourself to a limit, and then when you finally allow yourself, your body tells you that was too much.
Seeing a lot of nodding about the stress. Is there also hopefully a moment of exhilaration too, like that rush that performers get, when
I would
performance
say,
finally happens?
for me, the plating is the easy part, because I am always ready. So I push myself in advance of I will work 18 hours a day to make sure that every detail is 100% exactly how it needs to be. So the day of the event, we walk in, if there's time to be organized and have everything ready, I discuss with my team, this is the component you're doing. Everybody needs to, if one person is, when you're doing 100 plates at a time, if one person does the mashed potatoes, it comes out more the same, So you have a plating line where, that when a detail is missed, or I have a plate that I didn't like, it does haunt me. It haunts me. It drives me nuts.
I have
Seen a lot of
I have a lot in my freezer that, was supposed to go on a dish last summer. And we got home and I was like, oh, I can't believe we forgot it. But we also do, when we're doing a plated meal, one person is doing each item, because that's the only way it's going to look right. Yeah, but I also do mostly buffets, so if people are making their own plate, I just have to make sure the big bowl and the platter is attractive. And it gets halfway down and I'm going, oh, somebody change that, I can't stand it, because it doesn't look abundant.
Do you want to micromanage their plates too?
Oh, I do.
Of course.
I don't breathe until I'm ready to serve the cake, basically.
I'm getting that impression. Erin told us about what she brought here tonight. Would each of you like to just quickly tell us what we're about to enjoy visually and...
So I brought a spring roll, which is my own way, and probably is a little bit different from the spring rolls you are eating from other people's. But I think everyone has their own way of making it. So my ingredients are all there, and I can make it right there. And the way of cutting, and I have my knife. I have a particular knife to use, and also it's very particular for me and how to cut the certain foods, cut in what ways, and it's very particular. And I will show you. And I brought another dish is porridge. It's a sweet porridge, which is has all the healthy components for your bodies. And there's one main ingredient is called the red yeast rice. It sounds not really good, but this rice is really very healthy for your bodies, for lower the cholesterol. And there's other lotus seeds, lotus petals, and red beans, and or goji berries. Everything's come together in one pot, and for nourishing your body. So you can try for that.
Thank you, Sai. Sharon, what do you
I
bring?
actually made something very simple, but I only do it for small groups of people, so sorry, friend. Or for your dinner parties. They're called corn cakes, and it's a very light, delicate cracker, kind of cracker, but it's a little thicker with rosemary. And I love the flavor of them, so I wanted to share them. I did not bake a cake.
We brought a couple of different things. We brought some truffles and some chocolate charcuterie that are made with Vermont dairy, and we brought some bonbons that have other more savory style ingredients, including some mushroom truffles. And we also brought some samples of our bars. We brought our Fireside. We thought it was seasonal, so it's made with smoked sea salt, toasted almonds, and cocoa nibs. I created it so it looks like when you're sweeping at your your fireplace and people dustpan, that's what it looks like. It looks like smells and you are great. Yep.
It only occurs to me now we should have asked you all for your wine recommendations to go with the meal tonight. Alas, we only have sparkling water here. I can't thank you all enough. This has been so fun and stimulating and inspiring, and makes me want to think about more that we can do in this vein here at the museum. And let's please talk about that, because I would love to work with all of you on different programs and different directions we can go with this intersection of food and art. I can't thank you enough. Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. And now,
Hi, I'm Tavernier singer, and I own Tavernier Chocolates with my husband John Singer, and we're here at the Brattleboro Museum today amongst Emily Mason's incredible art. We're about to talk about our chocolates and what inspires us, and we're also going to have a sampling. So here we brought a collection of chocolates that we think represent our oeuvre, from nature-inspired and local food-inspired truffles, filled chocolates, and also chocolate charcuterie.
Hello, my name is Saishi. Today I'm going to present Chinese 5 elements that relate to the food, health, taste, and feelings. And so this I made a 5 elements apron. That's 5. It's red, green is wood, white is metal, yellow is earth, black is water. And thank you. I'm the founder and the chef for the Size Dim Sum Tea House.
Okay, hi, I'm Sharon Myers. These are corn cakes that I make for very special clients.
My name is Erin Bevan. I am the chef at Artisan Restaurant at the Four Columns Inn. I brought porchetta tonata. It is a slow roasted pork loin from Cherry Rail Farm with a traditional Italian sauce called tonata, which is made with tuna. And then it's garnished with some crispy capers.